It's a real pleasure to be here. I thank the organizers for the invitation and the opportunity to be here. I'm going to talk about something quite different. You've heard Microsoft, Agilent, IBM, and the scale is impressive and phenomenal. So you need to come down to earth a little bit. This is a small company. Okay. So I'll start talking about the world. You probably know some of these statistics. It is good to set the background. So we are 6 billion people or so on the planet, but each of us has about 2 devices connected to the internet. So today we have 12 billion devices connected to the internet. Usually, mostly phones and a laptop or a tablet. Over the next few years, we will connect our toasters, refrigerators, coffee machines, and so on. So we will expect to grow this to 20 billion odd devices. So that's good news if you're in the business of connecting devices, which we are. So this is good news. The content continues to grow. Over the last few years, people have had various views on what causes the bandwidth to grow. For some time it was video downloads on YouTube, then it was some peer-to-peer sharing, BitTorrent and all that. Today it appears to be essentially what we do with our smartphones, take pictures at this conference, upload it immediately. So there's a lot of content, 4 or 5 zettabytes worth of it, that's 10 to the power of 21. I always get confused, I had to look it up just before this talk. So that's 10 to the power of 21, and 2/3 of it is created by all of us, not really, and then uploaded into YouTube or Facebook or whatever. So these are the 2 things that are happening. So with the growth of data into zettabytes and more, and billions, 12 billion connected devices growing to 20 odd billion, there are 2 things that the world needs. One is increased data storage. So there's a lot of data centers, data storage, which is not a business we are in. The second thing that the world needs is high bandwidth networks to connect all of these, and that's almost the only technology that works for any bandwidth beyond, let's say, a gigabit. Wireless sort of stops at 1 gigabit. Even 1 gigabit is a stretch for wireless. Beyond that, it's only optical. So we are in the optical business, and I think all the signs are good that this is going to be a good business for a long time to come. I sort of view optical fiber technology as having the same role in the 21st century that, say, invention of electricity had throughout the 20th century, right? So it was invented around the beginning of the century, and it took like 100 years before everybody had electricity. I think optical fiber technology is similar. Most of us have it now, but over the next few decades, every home will have this. So our business is building optical networking equipment mostly. We are starting to get into wireless as well. So what we do at Tejas is to build optical networking equipment which connects cell towers, DSLAMs, offices, universities, and then connect them all the way up to the internet gateway. So we can build networks in neighborhoods, cities, national networks. We have done this on a very big scale in India. To give you some sense, India has about 300,000 cell towers, about half of which are fiberized. And we are present in over 100,000 cell towers with fiber optic transmission equipment. Again, in India, we connect well over 5,000 new enterprises, which are offices or universities, every year, providing them optical bandwidth. Of course, we do this through our customers who are service providers. We only supply equipment. Okay. If you look at the optical networking market, this is a global view. Indian market is much smaller. India is maybe 5% of the world's market, or 10% thereabouts. So the optical networking market is about $15 billion today or last year, and it's growing, 7% or so. It will grow to about 17 billion. So it's a good market to be in. It's a multi-billion-dollar market. We don't address all of this market. So of the 10 billion or so, we address about of the 15 billion, we address less than 10 billion, but that's a big enough market for a small company. Okay. Now, even though this is a big market, and I showed you there are lots of connected devices, 10 billion plus, the distribution of these devices is not uniform. I can see from this map, though I hadn't observed it before. So this is a good map, so we can spend a minute trying to understand it. So red, or brightly lit up, means the density of connected devices is very high. So in the east coast of the United States and on the west coast, the density of devices per unit area is very high. These are devices connected to the internet. And same is the case with Europe. Brazil seems to be doing fine, if I can see the bright light down near Sao Paulo, where we are. But if you look at much of Asia, all of Africa, it's really dark. Okay? So there's a lot of work to do, which means over the next decade or so, we can expect to see a lot more connectivity coming up in these parts of the world because they're really poor. If you look at even India, where we work, there is still a lot of fiber optic networks that need to get built out. There are a lot more devices that need to get connected onto the internet. I'll tell you a little bit more about that. The situation is, equally the same in Africa. So let me take you to India and tell you the situation. Over the last decade or so, maybe from 2004 till 2010 or 11, India essentially connected its whole population with mobile phones. We had 50 million landlines, fixed line phones in 2002 or 3. And then, the government had many plans with the previous, the years prior to that, to try and increase tele-density. And all of that got done very quickly once mobile technology came along. At some point, India was adding 10 million phone lines a month, mobile phone lines a month. It was news all over because we were adding the equivalent of a small European country every month. Today we have 910 million mobile connections. In this whole story, one of the regrets I have is we just provided backhaul. Backhaul is only a small portion of mobility, but we ended up doing something, and that was the part we played in this mobile revolution. But we are at the beginning of another revolution. If you look at broadband, well, India has over 900 million phones for a population of between 1.1 to 1.2 billion. So if you leave out infants, pretty much everybody has a mobile phone. But we only have 15 million broadband connections, fixed line broadband connections, which is all DSL. There's pretty much no GPON. And India has about 300 million homes. So only 5% of the homes are connected by broadband. And this number has not changed for the last 2 or 3 years. So because it's hard to lay copper to new homes, it's not cost effective. But the number of broadband subscribers is growing. In my view, this is not a true picture. We have 50 million 3G based broadband connections, but my view is that it's the same 15 million homes. If you look at my home, we have one broadband connection and 4 3G phones. So pretty much everybody is like that. So I think beyond the 5%, there is no broadband penetration. So we are, everyone expects, except the timelines are different. The government would like 150 million by 2015, which is almost impossible given we are only, 50 million plus today. But my own expectation is we'll get to 150 million, which is like 50% of the homes having broadband in the next 4 or 5 years. So this presents an opportunity for an Indian company, an indigenous vendor, to address this market, which by itself is not very unusual, but then to become a global supplier based on that local market pull. And that's what we've sort of done to date, and I will elaborate on that. So if you look at where our position in the Indian market, pretty much every telecom service provider is a customer. In many cases, we are the number 1 or number 2 supplier to all the telcos who are providing fiber optic bandwidth for their metro networks. So largely what we provide is metro optical networks to provide bandwidth in cities and regions. And for that, for the likes of Airtel, which is India's number 1 mobile operator, Telecommunications, which is one of the largest bandwidth providers, we are the number 1 or number 2 provider of equipment. Using the strength of our business in India, we went into adjacent markets. So we are a dominant provider of fiber optic equipment in Bangladesh, which is really our neighbor, Malaysia, and we started to get into Africa, into Kenya. We went with our customers. So Tatacom bought Neotel in South Africa, Airtel bought Zain in Africa. So we followed them into Africa, and we have some foothold there. But these are, 5 or 6 countries. So how do we get to the rest of the countries? Football or soccer is played in 120 countries. So how do we get to at least 50 countries? So the business model that we have adopted is that talking to large companies, we tell them, and they have been persuaded, that the equipment we have is particularly suited to emerging markets. And the only evidence they have to look is, look, in India we are number 1, we are better than you. So we go to our competitors, and then we convince them, and they take our equipment and under their label sell it worldwide. So today we are actually sold in over 60 countries, and I try to do some informal estimation. I understand we have about 1,000 boxes in Brazil, not too much, but not as a Tejas label. So we are there in many countries around the world. So the way this works is, we've developed the products, we leverage R&D costs in India. Now everybody leverages R&D costs in India, especially software. Most companies, I come from Bangalore. Bangalore is, every company in the world has a big office in Bangalore with thousands or tens of thousands of software engineers. So we leverage the same R&D to build our products, which is both software and hardware. Software centric. So the way we tend to build our products is, we like to own our IPR. So we use FPGAs, field programmable gate arrays, network processors, DSPs. So we build our products with IPR into these programmable devices. So that enables us to control cost, because you need to have very high margins if you have an arrangement that we're going to sell to an OEM and he's going to sell worldwide. We have very good knowledge of the Indian market and by extension the emerging markets. We work closely with our customers there. They tell us exactly what they want. I mean, our competitors talk to them too, but these are our primary customers. So we listen to them even more intently than our competitors, so we have exactly the products that they want. We also rush to implement new standards so that we have something to brag about. So this is our strength. We know the customers, we put in a lot of R&D. So we have, for a company of 550 people, we have 400 people in R&D. Mostly D, very little R, but then that's sizable. In terms of revenue, we invest over 20% of our revenue in R&D. But we can't sell worldwide, we don't have channels. So we partner with the OEMs. Our competitors in India, but partners outside of India. They give us access to global markets, to tier 1 carriers. They tend to sell us largely in emerging markets, but recently they're also selling us in the tier 1 markets, but sort of in a lower segment of the market for access rather than aggregation or metro. The benefits to us are obvious. We get access to the global market instantly. We have very little investment in sales and marketing outside of India, but we get the growth. And we also get to learn about needs of the global market, and we modify the product, so that creates even greater pull. For the OEM partner, The OEM partners like to build bigger products. So let me give you a specific, a couple of examples here. In India, I told you there are 900 million mobile phone connections, but only 50 million 3G. So there are 850 2G connections. So any backhaul technology you deploy has to cater well to these 800 million plus 2G connections for a long time. So which means we can't discard 2G as something that's going to go away. So we have to have strong support for things like circuit emulation, which we do very well, which large companies, the US or European based companies, don't pay attention to, because in their countries the number of 2G connections is very small. The second place where we do very well is, I already showed you there is very little fixed broadband in India. So most of the traffic is mobile. So when you get, and there are operators who only do mobile connections. They don't have any fixed business at all. So a big city like Mumbai, which is the largest city in India, bigger than Sao Paulo, all the traffic will amount to 10 or 20 gig, which is peanuts if you look at the traffic from a US or European country. But we need very reliable equipment, the same reliability that you would get for equipment with 100 or 200 gig capacity or even a terabit capacity in the US. We need to provide for equipment with a total capacity of maybe 40 or 50 gig. So that also we do very well. So it turns out that because of our focus on that market, our products are a very good fit for that market. And so the OEM partner can use them in similar markets. And they can focus their own efforts on very high capacity products, usually in the terabit range when it comes to fiber optics. And they get to complete their portfolio without any R&D investment. Not lower cost R&D investment in India, but no R&D investment at all, because we have the full portfolio. They just focus on the sales and marketing. Probably, I think for this audience, the products that we do and the technologies involved may not make any sense, but so don't try to understand all the acronyms. But essentially, in optical transport, the emerging technology is something called OTN and PTN, packet transport, optical transport. They sound like generic terms, but actually they're very specific new standards for optical transport, based on TDM in the case of OTN, based on packet switching in the case of PTN. These are the way the next generation of optical networks are being built. You can think of them as the equivalent of 4G for optical. So you have many services. You have legacy services which are TDM, you have new services which are packet, but your network can also be TDM or packet, and it turns out you can have TDM over packet, packet over TDM, and all the combinations make sense. So we built equipment that can essentially service any combination of client signals which are TDM or packet, and you can choose to run your network on TDM or packet. Not stopping there. So this is what we've done so far for the last 10 plus years. But going forward, we understand a lot of the business is going to be in broadband. So we have actually, our roadmap today consists of building LTE eNode Bs, which are essentially the 4G base stations. But we are building not micro base stations, but macro, big fat LTE base stations, because we think the only way India is going to get broadband is by having wireless. So just like we got telephony with mobile or cellular technology, broadband is also going to be a fixed LTE. That's what we are betting on. But that's the way 300 million homes will get broadband. Somebody will lay fiber. Actually, the Indian government is laying fiber to over 250,000 villages, which is essentially almost all the villages in the country. So, but it's very hard to lay fiber in the cities. So it's actually going to be the reverse of what you would think. Most people think it's fiber in the cities and wireless to go to rural areas because it's hard to lay fiber. But it turns out that in India it's the exact opposite. The government has the resources and the will to lay fiber to the villages, so the villages get fiber. The cities have right-of-way issues, which the government is not solving anytime soon. They leave it to the private sector because the cities have enough private sector people falling over each other to serve that market. So it's going to be wireless in the city. So we're developing both LTE equipment and GPON equipment. So let me give you some examples of what we have already been successful. So we have two OEMs, and I can't name them for confidentiality reasons. They don't like to advertise that they're selling our products, so we sort of are under the hood. But one of the OEMs has adopted 3 of our optical networking products. It's sold under their label worldwide. They've sold over 150 million in the last 7 or 8 years, which is roughly 20% of our revenue. So about 20% of our revenue comes from this OEM selling products worldwide. They sell in emerging markets. We complement their product portfolio, and both of us are very happy with this relationship. Another relationship which is more recent is whatever technologies we are building for optical transport, which revolves around some technology called MPLS transport profile, which is an adaptation of MPLS for optical transport. It turns out that the same thing is needed for microwave backhaul. So one of the top microwave companies in the world came to us. We had discussions for a long time, and we recently signed a relationship where we have co-developed a product, which means we take all our MPLS TP technology, but instead of running them over optical fiber, we run them over microwave modems. And the microwave modems come from our OEM partner, and they're using this to address the North American market. So this is an example where they're not using it to address emerging markets, but to address essentially the North American market, because they can get the next generation of microwave backhaul product very quickly by partnering with us and adapting our optical backhaul product. This is another example of an OEM. We also have examples of global companies reselling our product. This is sold under our brand. So another large microwave product vendor, not the same as the previous one, when you build out networks, customers like one company, a big company usually, to provide everything. So they ask this company for microwave products and optical products, and so they use our optical products rather than trying to build their own. And even in India, the last example is of a company in India, one of the largest providers of cellular networking products. So they want a deal for 3G, but the customer said, it's not enough that you supply 3G equipment. I also want you to connect all my base stations with fiber optic transmission equipment, and you need to do this on a turnkey basis. And customers are often like that when it comes to new technologies, and so this company partnered with us, so we offered our backhaul. So these are examples where we develop products essentially for one market. We are selling worldwide through tier 1 OEMs who would be our competition in a classic case, but now they are partners. Then this was my prepared talk, and as I sat through yesterday and today, I realized I'm not doing justice to a conference for physicists. So I'll tell you something about the role of physicists. In our R&D, we have few physicists, and I think that's true of most companies, except the numbers in our case will be very small, but as a percentage, it's probably 1 or 2% is maybe similar. Some CS, mostly EE, because that's what we use to develop products. But our head of optical R&D, who is a physicist, a PhD, and one of his key architects is also a physicist. So physicists play a key role in our company, except they have swarms of EEs working for them. Okay. Our next step is our recent focus is on wireless. We are building 4G products which we will sell, but I think the real problem, the next generation is 5G. Okay. Nobody really knows what 5G is. Everybody is rushing, scrambling to claim that what they have is 5G. So I think we still need to conceive what 5G is. We need to invent the IPR that goes into 5G, patents. We need to standardize 5G and develop 5G products. And one thing I would like to say is, while much of the focus of US, Europe, and other countries is to connect everything to the internet. So 5G is claimed to be the solution for the internet of everything, IoE. I would like to say that in developing markets, and especially I showed you the lack of light in much of the world is dark, I think IoE should be Internet of everyone. So 5G should really also work on not only connecting everything to the Internet, from toasters to cars to coffee machines, but also finding an economical way to connect everyone to the Internet. And it's really economics, because people can't afford to pay a lot for broadband connectivity. To give you an idea, phone connectivity in India only costs less than $2 a month. So broadband connectivity has to be in the same price point, and we are currently not able to do that with 3G or 4G technologies, which is why people don't adopt. So we need to get it down to a couple of dollars a month to be connected to broadband. And so I think for people in the developing world, this is important, and 5G has to focus on that. My own view is that while everyone claims that they already have 5G, 5G will need a new physical layer. If you look at the history of mobile technology, 2G was GSM, which was a different modulation scheme. 3G was wideband CDMA. Again, you change the modulation scheme from TDM to CDMA. 4G was OFDM and MIMO. And unless we come up with something new for 5G, we can't call it 5G. So we need a new physical layer, which needs new physics and the top applied physicists. If you work for a company like Tejas, you'll get to file patents. So we file about 50 patents a year, nothing compared to 5,000 patents of IBM, but we filed a few. Actually, we are one of the larger patent filers in India, number 3 or something. Mostly in wireless, but very few publications. We don't discourage publications, but it turns out that we don't strongly encourage it either. Maybe that's something we should be doing differently. Okay. So this is a quick conclusion. In the global marketplace, everybody does R&D around the world. Everybody does R&D in Bangalore, actually, and cost arbitrage is a big deal. But what we have done is we develop products for the emerging markets, which I think is true everywhere. And I see companies in Brazil developing products for the Brazilian market. But the one difference is that we've been able to take it and sell it back to large companies to sell around the world. Okay, so we offer a new model where we develop products at our own cost, our own R&D for the Indian market. We can partner with global companies with these products. They can sell it in all emerging markets, maybe even in tier 1 markets where there's a fit. They don't incur any R&D cost, zero. Okay, so there's a new, a different way of doing R&D in the global market. You don't need an introduction, so that's actually the end of my talk, but I wanted to spend a minute or two telling you about Tejas Networks. I won't say everything, it's there for you to read. You don't need an introduction to Microsoft, Agilent, and IBM, but maybe you need to know a little bit about Tejas. So we started 14 years ago. We are in Bangalore. Desh Deshpande is the chairman of the company. He's also co-chair of President Obama's Council on Innovation. We have many blue-chip investors. We've raised over $80 million in capital, mostly from US-based venture funds. Last 5 years, we did about $400 million. I'm happy to say that we are 50% India, 50% outside last year. So that's a big deal for us, because we used to be 80% India. And that was a very big country risk. So last year, we derived just over 50% of revenue from outside India. We're very R&D heavy, and we're number 1 in India. We go between number 1 and number 2, but we are up there, better than most of the global companies when it comes to the Indian optical networking market. So, thank you.